And then to take us through what this committee, how they're going about the public hearing, Markwe, stare us this time.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. I have with me here former Senate President Ken Nnamani, who is the chairman of the Constitution and Electoral Reform Committee. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Good morning.
Well, it would seem that your mandate has been expanded to Constitution as well, Constitution and Electoral Reform Committee. We did hear initially that it was just a Electoral Reform Committee, and that's why a number of people wondered what were they reviewing if we already had the Justice Uwais Committee. And your statement at that time was that nothing was so good that it cannot be improved upon. Is this an expansion?
Certainly not, Markwe. You see, there are some aspects of the Constitution that relate or that has a very strong impact on the electoral system. We are only expected to take a look at the Constitution, those sections that affect the electoral system specifically. It's not the entire Constitution. It's just merely to examine the parts that affect. Take, for instance, we are told that our Constitution makes it very clear that there is no independent candidacy. If we now have to recommend to the executive branch the fact that, that there's a need to have an independent candidate such that we do not encroach on individual fundamental human rights, it requires constitutional amendment. It has to get off the Constitution so that it will be consistent with the Electoral Act. Actually, Electoral Act derives from the Constitution. I would like to point out that when you're talking about the electoral system, there are two aspects of it, integral parts. That's the Constitution on one part, and then the Electoral Act. But of course, the Constitution is the grand norm. And therefore, there's no way we could have been asked to review the electoral system without taking a look at the aspects of the Constitution that make the electoral system what it is today. Okay,
so it would seem now that your mandate has been expanded just quite a bit.
No, it's part of the terms of reference.
It has always been part of the terms of reference.
Yes, and in fact, that takes me to make a comment on this. I have observed you have an army of professional public analysts.
Who are entitled to their opinion?
Of course, they are, but they should have found time to read the terms of reference before, because one of the qualities of good education is that it makes you to know how little you know about the subject. Education humbles you.
We will come to that shortly. You have already started going around, conducting this open hearing, it will seem. What has the response been like?
Yes, very good question. Now, the response has been wonderful. We have covered 2 zones now. Any person thinking that public hearing is a political rally is making a mistake. Public hearing involves...
You found people constructing it in that manner?
I've had people say the crowd is not so much. The word crowd there doesn't arise because people are coming to public hearing to make a contribution, to air their views on a particular subject, which means they have taken time out to prepare their presentation, or they have an idea, they have thought about the problems and how to solve it. So it's not a political rally. It's something that requires some elements of intellectual exercise. You have to think deep and come up with fresh thinking. How do we make it better? The easiest thing people do is to criticize. Well, when you ask for suggestion, constructive suggestion, it's lacking.
But how fresh is the thinking that you're getting?
Well, we're getting quite a lot, particularly the 2 zones we have now visited, Southeast and South-South. We were in Calabar only 2 days ago. Fantastic. People who have gone through the system, observers, people from civil societies, they have made very concrete suggestions. And remember, it is not final. We will prepare a report that we will send to the executive branch that actually empaneled us. Then the executive will go through it and choose those areas that they would like to send to National Assembly. National Assembly has the ultimate authority to now come up with the final harmonization of the facts.
You're not trying to usurp the role of the National Assembly?
No, we're just making suggestions to them through the executive branch. In fact, in one of our retreats, the chairman of the Constitutional Review Committee of the National Assembly, Deputy Senate President Ike Nnamani, was with us at Uyo, and he made a very wonderful presentation which showed that we're in line, because the areas of variance, of course. However, from his presentations, I think we are doing the right thing.
Well, you know, people will wonder, what thinking can be new again? I mean, it would seem that everything that needs to be said about our electoral process has been said. What has been lacking is the political will to implement some of it, or to implement all of it, or in terms of how, you know, people have received it, or to perfect the system that we have inherited. How would you respond to that?
In all countries that are transiting to full-blown democracy, there's always that need to have a constant review of the electoral law. Constant review, because it's a country in transition. We are not fully, we cannot say that we are 100% democratic nation by way of the way we handle our electoral systems. The situation in Nigeria is a little bit different in the sense that you have to think about the cultural aspect of what's going on in our electoral system. We are told that WIS report covered quite a lot of grounds. But if you flash back on what happened recently at Kogi, there's no aspect of that report that anticipated such a situation. So, and that's why I say Electoral Act is dynamic.
Yeah, but the law,
it's not static.
They say that the law will not anticipate every part, you know, every situation, every circumstance. It will do its best, and that's why we have the courts. And the courts in that instance were able to resolve the situation.
In fact, we are trying to see, by our own contributions out of this exercise, how we can reduce the court involvement in our electoral system to barest minimum. There'll still be the court there. We are trying to see if it is possible for people to win elections at polling booths, not at the court premises. Because right now, it costs more to pursue litigations after electoral process, after elections, than during the campaign. People reserve lots of their resources to wage litigation battle. That is not held enough. If after the electorate finish delivering their mandate to a particular person, either for one reason, for one technical fault or the other, through our legal system, the person is thrown out. In other words, the mandate is vitiated because of our style of ambushing people legally.
You mentioned something that's very interesting, which I find a little, I don't know how that is going to be incorporated into your recommendations. You talked about, you know, the cultural aspect of our society. How is the cultural aspect of our society affecting our electoral process?
Well, you see, I said that because when you are passing bills, when people are making laws, that's the parliament, you take a close look at the environment, the nature of the people, our voting systems. We have talked about that there are certain people, for one reason or the other, are not in position to participate in the voting. Either the women in Poda, or so many aspects of people, because of their religious distance, they may not come out and do voting. Certain aspect of that has to be taken into consideration and see how do people vote now, where we vote now. Is it possible for electronic voting to be applied 100%? I noticed somebody was advocating for that, but it still has its own flaws too, because there must be some element of paper trail for people, assuming that the electronic aspect of it has a problem. There should be a way of a backup to check whether or not the claims are right. We're talking in terms of lay the proof of an election, that somebody won an election, should the proof be on the candidate or should it be on the INEC, the electoral management body? There's a lot of opinion on this. People are saying that let the burden of proof rest on INEC. Some are saying it should be on the candidate. The candidate probably may not be in position to produce all the things that are required. So we feel very strongly that constant review will bring us near to perfection.
But the National Assembly does
near
that
to perfection
almost every year. I mean, we see the Electoral Act being reviewed almost every year before the elections. Isn't that sufficient?
Well, that is from legislative standpoint, but the executive still has an input to make. And that's why some people are making the mistake of thinking that we waste a report, that is a report that was presented in 2008, almost 9 years old now. But it was a mere recommendation to the executive branch. And the executive now sent a bill to the National Assembly. Some aspects of it were implemented. For instance, the idea that INEC should be on a first-line charge is being implemented, has been going on. And you will agree with me that our election has improved steadily from 2007, that was a disastrous outing, to 2011 to 2015. There's an improvement. Some elements of WIS recommendation have been adopted. And the fact that the legislative arm that has the exclusive authority to prepare the bill eventually, that they review it every year, shows the growth.
Senator, I'm afraid that I have to interrupt you there. We'll have to take a moment now. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. Sunrise Daily will continue in just a moment. Don't go away.